really don't like accentuating the differences between the denominations, because it's so useless.
Agreed.
Like it accomplishes.
I agree so much.
It accomplishes literally nothing. In fact, the only thing that it accomplishes is division and strife within the church. Like the church. There should be it doesn't matter. Whatever your faith looks like, like I care about the fruit, and this is biblical, right? A good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. So you could be Catholic, you could do all those things, and that's what popped into my head, because you're like, I don't want to.
But the Catholic Church is very.
It's not producing a lot of good fruit. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got: we need you to start thinking like a coach, not a player, right? Because I don't know, dude. I come from some of the neighborhoods where police department, like not these neighborhoods specifically, but like the types of neighborhoods that are losing funding for their police department. And I can promise you, the people that live there are not the ones with the defund the police thing on their front lawn. It's the people out in freaking Frontenac that are, defund the police. Just don't defund them here.
In their gated communities.
Yeah, like those are the people talking about defund the police. The most alarming thing to me, what I was just about to say, is driving around St. Louis. This is crazy. Driving around St. Louis.
Are we rolling right now?
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, you look at social media, and it is, the modern day gold rush is social media. And I think you have these advertisers that are paying money, and whether it's like OnlyFans or, you can label content bad. I do. I think, like there's a section of social media that I don't want to be affiliated with. Yeah. And I think that the money kind of speaks for itself, though. You have people making money doing
money, like real money,
a lot of money.
Can I tell you, do you know what I used to do for work?
No.
So I used to, essentially I worked for a sizable company, and my job was to recruit these influencers, a lot of times from other brands. My boss never told me to do that, but that's what I did. I would go, right, and I would find whoever was like, the most effective influencers for these other competing brands, and I would slowly just build a rapport, and then eventually try to like steal those people and sign them on to work for our company and promote our products. Well, so a lot of it was just relationship management, because once I acquired an influencer, my job would be to like manage that relationship, make sure that they stay happy, make sure that they're, sort of effectively promoting and selling our products. And so I got like a peek behind the scenes, especially as this OnlyFans things kind of really took off. I'm dealing primarily with fitness influencers, and then I watched like some of them start to dabble in that. There's a friend of what I call her a friend, an acquaintance that I had, and I guess I won't say her name, but I recruited her. She was 20 years old. She turned 21 shortly after, and she was on OnlyFans, and 21 years old. I flew her out to St. Louis. We're hanging out, and then I started asking her about the OnlyFans stuff, and she was making $200,000 a month at 20 years old.
Yeah, it's wild.
And she never posted a single nude pic. Like she was.
So what was her content? What do you mean?
It was her in like these
fitness. Yeah,
there's this specific brand of bikinis that are really like, they're popular on the West Coast. It's called Bootlina or something like that. Anyway, but they're just super skimpy. I mean, like,
right. So it's a little scandalous. The content's not PG.
It's super skimpy. It's not PG. Yeah. But she never posted anything nude and was making $200,000 a month.
Well, good for her. I mean, I think you have to give.
That's insane.
Yeah.
You say good for her.
I mean, look, you can't tell people not to do that when they're making the money. But at the same time, it's like, where do we draw the line? Like, are we doing all these things for money? Are we doing it for views? And you kind of get into the faith conversation there. I mean,
well, that's what it's faith, morality. It's kind of the same conversation. But yeah, you get into this conversation with yourself about where's the line of what I'm willing to do in exchange for money, Well,
let me ask you this, because you have a really fascinating story, and I would love to kind of break it down. But like, what does it mean to be successful? Is it money? Is making money, is that what it means to be successful today? Is it just to get attention, to have financial success? I would argue there's more to it than just that.
Yeah, no, not for me. I mean, but everybody's answer is different. But Yeah, I made a commitment to myself like 9 years ago that I was never going to do anything again just for money. Like, obviously I do things for money, but like, I'll give you an example. A lot of my friends are in real estate. They're crushing it in real estate. And I'm not in real estate. They've tried to get me in real estate.
And you have no interest, or
I have a lot of interest, but the only reason that I'm not in the reason I'm not in real estate is because if I got into real estate, it would be just to make money. I'm not like actually interested in real estate. I'm not.
Right.
It's a game.
Right.
And so I made a commitment like 9 years ago to myself and to God that I was never, ever, ever going to do anything again just for money. And that's why I describe myself now as like a passion-driven person or mission-driven person, is because I have to have a cause that I'm, sort of working towards. And for me, success involves that. It involves what you work at. But then I have this other thing that I've shared on the podcast before, is like husband, father, teammate, friend, man. For me, I've thought a lot about like what society, maybe not what they ask of, but what the role of men in society. And I think the role of our 5 primary responsibilities as men, all men, is husband, father, teammate. Teammate applies both at work and in your community. Friend is like not just who you are, the type of friend you are to everybody that you know, but your 5 closest friends. What kind of friend are you for those people, or whatever, your inner circle? And then men is like, who are you as an individual? And I think that we have, for me, the way I've described it before is like, I imagine that those 5 things are buckets. And it occurred to me at one point, like we've all seen countless examples of like these celebrities or these well-known people who are uber successful, but their wife wants a divorce, or they're super successful. They're at the pinnacle of success in their career, but their kids hate them or don't even know who they are. And for me, how I describe that is that person, their career bucket, their finance is overflowing, but their husband bucket is empty,
right,
and their father bucket is empty. And so for me, what success is making small deposits in each one of those buckets every day, so that if and when any of them are full, they're all full. Does that make sense?
So what does it mean? I mean, it makes sense, but it kind of brings me back to like this balance question. How do you balance those, right?
Well,
because
that's a great question.
What does it mean? Let me ask you this. What does it mean to be a provider? Like, as a man's man, if you have a wife and a family, you have to make money. Well, money's important. So there's a sense of like, I'm going to go get mine. I'm going to support my family.
You can make money doing anything. This is something that I realized sitting in prison. Like, what it's mind blowing to me.
So what was that like? I haven't heard the story. You haven't shared that with me. Maybe. Hold
on. Let me finish this thought, because balance is it's a great question and a great thing to bring up. I don't look at balance like at striving to achieve. I think it's silly to strive to achieve balance on a daily basis. You got to stretch out the time horizon, like say 20 years or 40 years.
Big picture.
And balance. What does balance look? That's what balance looks like. Is for 40 years, you spend this first decade, you're out of balance, but you're focused on work. And this second decade, you're out of balance, but now you're focused on your kids. And this third decade, it's like your kids and your wife. And then this fourth decade, it's you and your wife spending time, with each other. That's balance. You've achieved balance over the course of this time horizon. And on a daily basis, though, what filling up each one of those buckets look like is you have to disassociate yourself from the idea that like that time is the deposit. Time is not the deposit. I hate it when people say time is our most valuable asset. No, it's not. Attention is your most valuable asset, because you can spend time with somebody, but if you're not giving them your attention, then that time is like really meaningless. You can spend time in class, but if you're not paying attention, you're not actually gaining anything. Sure. And so your attention is the most valuable thing that you have. And if I work for 12 hours a day, sometimes more, but on average about 12 hours a day. Well, when I go home, my wife only gets an hour. And somebody would say, oh, well, that's not, you're not making equal deposits.
But if that hour is meaningful.
That hour is meaningful. That's the deposit. And that hour filled up my husband bucket just as much as those 12 hours filled up my, my work bucket or whatever.
Well, it's such a personal thing though, right? I mean, it's not like there's a one size fits all. Everybody has their own way of doing it.
Yeah, but you're just saying, how do I balance if that's my, if that's my idea of success, is making sure that if any of these buckets are full, they're all full. That's how I do it. And I also have this pie chart that I've shared with my wife. that's like, it breaks down my days. So it's the whole circle is 24 hours.
So are you analytical? I mean, do you have a good perspective on,
I suppose I'm not, I don't know. I think in some senses and not in others. But back to what you asked me about before I went on the tangent is, the realization in prison, dude. I used to sit in prison on my bed, right, every day, and I would literally just fantasize about what I would do with my time if I could do anything I wanted. Like if I was free, if I was not in prison,
right.
Like people don't think about your current circumstances free. Like, or maybe you do if you think about it, but it doesn't like,
you take it for granted.
It's not like at the forefront of your mind that like I'm free. I can literally do whatever I want right now. Right. And so I used to fantasize about what I would do with my time. And it wasn't like fly to Europe, or it was like, I would like work. Like I would, I used to think about the businesses that I would start, which I did start and I built, but I would be like, oh man, I would just get my personal training certification and I would start, doing this, and I would, go around town and introduce myself to all the people.
So you're kind of scheming though. When you have all that time, you have the ability to, there's an advantage in that at the same time. But it was in those days that it's an interesting perspective sitting in prison, because you're so removed from society that your absence wouldn't be any more pronounced if you died. It's the same. You're out of it, and so you're on the outside looking in. And from the outside looking in, one of the best things that ever happened to me was realizing that my mom and my parents really essentially lived in the exact same routine that I lived in prison. Like they had voluntarily imprisoned themselves, and they're not unique. Most Americans do this. Let me explain. So when in prison, you wake up in the morning, you eat breakfast, then you go to program and you work for a number of hours, or, and then you take a break for lunch, and then you go back to program and you work for a number of hours, and then you go back to your housing unit, then you eat dinner, and then you sit and you watch like Netflix or the basketball game or whatever, but until you go to bed, and then you go to bed, you wake up, you do it all over again. You're looking forward to the weekend, because on the weekend, you don't have to go to program. You can just sit around. Yeah. Dude, my parents lived in that exact same, and they don't love their work. When you say that, do you mean you're talking about your upbringing and like how they raised you, or are you just saying in general most Americans live within the 9 to 5 boundaries?
Most Americans, I think it's about not only about the routine, but about like the spirit with which they approach the vast majority of their time. Like my dad hates his job. He hates his job. He works at a chemical plant. He recently had a cancer scare. Guaranteed it's because he's working with chemicals all day for the last 25 years.
Sure.
He hates his job. And in prison, I sat there and I said, you can literally do anything. Right. And you can make money doing anything, because you're asking, okay, well, you have to be a provider. You can make money doing anything.
But the grass is always greener, right? I mean, when you're, I'm imagining you're in jail and you're thinking about that. It's easy to say that when you're.
Bro, I can honestly say I have literally never done anything in exchange for money since that moment that my heart wasn't in it. Never, not a single thing.
I mean, that's really admirable. And just coming in here and.
But you can do it. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not special.
You've done it. No, you've done it. Most people never try. No, most people never try.
That's the difference. I'm not special or unique. It's the mentality. It's the. You have to be willing to
fail.
Well, to fail, but also to live below your means for a period of time. Like I've lost everything. I've lived on a prison diet, So like, your question was like, well, you have to provide for your family. Listen, the average American they have no perspective of like how good they have it. And it's like, you can live on less. You can live on less. You can live with less. You can. So like.
But in today's society, that's not attractive, right? It's always, let's get the shiny car. I want the high paying job. Look at me. It's my post.
You know what I think about that? That's weak. That's weak ass shit. For real.
I agree. No, I agree. And we're not talking about that, right? I mean, if this goes on social media, it's, we're kind of playing into that whole thing where it's, I hope this clip does well. I hope people watch this podcast. And you kind of have to compartmentalize that, right? Let's put that aside. There's meaning behind this conversation, right? You're interviewing 100%. People, and you're in this space that has its own vibe. There's a whole aesthetic here that I think is really important. if we can kind of pivot to that, I'd like to talk about like what Omen means to you, because
No. I want to pivot to you. Okay. I've already talked a little bit, but there's a reason why I had you on this podcast. And part of it is just because you're a part of our community here. And truly, like, I don't know if I told you this, but the only prerequisite for being a guest on the show is that you actually have to be a part of our community. Like I have a lot of friends that are, that if I wanted to do better on social media, I could just have my influencer friends come on. But if they don't come here, then they're not coming on the show.
Interesting. I like that. Well, I'm new. It's not like I've been coming here for years. I mean,
but you've been coming long enough. You come, you hang out.
Well, I come because I like it.
My employers,
I come because I love coming here, and the people here are what make it cool. I mean, behind the counter and everybody just hanging out, and
Sarah,
not to mention it's faith based. That adds a whole nother element to it. But outside of that, there is a really cool atmosphere, and just to see St. Louisans come together, not drunk. Not at the club. We're coming here to work, whatever that is, and collaborate. I think it's really admirable, and I hope that this kind of snowballs into something else. I hope there's more to this than just Omen, right? I hope other people come in and say, yes, this is. I mean, we could make this a whole thing, and to talk about St. Louis a little bit, which is my
you're
passion.
from St. Louis, right?
I'm from St. Louis, born and raised, proudly. And
you're super passionate about the city.
I am. Now, I'm not from the city, which is a whole other debate, right? The city-county divide, which is. I think a barrier, right? I mean, you have this line, and financially speaking, like with tax dollars, people in the city want people in the county to pay into the system, right? I mean, if you're in Chesterfield, you don't want to give your tax dollars to the city for good reason. I mean, if I lived out there, I wouldn't want my money coming down here, because part of it too is they waste it. But the bigger thing is you have all of these different government municipalities, and I think that's what makes St. Louis cool. You have like 84 neighborhoods in the city.
Really?
And you have these different communities with different ethnicities, different religions, different cultures. And that's what makes St. Louis cool. It's really diverse.
Yeah.
But you have a problem with the finances. And so that's what I've been working on with a group of people.
Yeah, is the group have a name, or?
It's just called AuditSTL 2024.
Got it.
And you can go online to AuditSTL2024.com if you want to learn more. I wanted to bring my paper. I couldn't find it, but
I mean, to give a little background though, like, because we have to kind of lay the framework, and guys, this is like, so the big reason why I actually expedited this conversation with Mitch, because I had, a lot of people come around the shop. I've seen a lot of people come and go in the past, couple years, and it's tough for me to try to talk to everybody. So Mitch had come a couple times, and I hadn't really, gotten a chance to get to know him or start a conversation or anything like that for whatever reason. Either I'm running around or I'm talking to somebody else. But the other day, I finally, got a chance to just spark up a conversation with Mitch, and man, and you guys know I'm so passionate about St. Louis. Like and I'm not even from here, but like I literally could have started my business anywhere. Like I left my career. I had an option. I wasn't committed to, I had a house. I sold my house, and I could have went wherever I wanted. And I decided to stay because I see so much potential in the city. And so a lot of times my day to day is talking to people here in the shop who are from St. Louis, and they're always like, man, I just can't wait to get out of here. And I find myself as a transplant trying to sell them as a native on why they should stay and why St. Louis is worth it.
And that's a common trend, by the way.
It's common, super common. And so because grass is always greener. That's why. Because these people here, they think, somewhere else is going to be better. You don't know. You didn't go anywhere else. I did. But anyway, so I start up a conversation with Mitch, and it's immediately apparent that he is equally as, if not more, passionate about this city than I am. And not only that, because I don't really care. Passion only gets you so far. If you don't put actions behind it, you have
to do something.
You have to do something. Exactly. You could be passionate about, Donald Trump, but if all you do is post memes on the internet, then I don't really care. It doesn't do anything. But Mitch is actually doing something, and so I wanted to preface the conversation with that. And then secondarily, I did want you to start by sort of, what leads you, because the big thing he's working on right now is auditing the city of St. Louis. Okay. Now, before we get into that though, what leads you to that thought Because, people not from St. Louis, they maybe not understand. But you look around the city and did you just start to wonder, like, why is none of this stuff getting better?
This isn't my project, right?
Sure.
I didn't start this.
You're a part of it.
I'm a part of it, and I'm proudly a part of it. But what's interesting is, and I have my political views, right? I lean a certain way, and so does everybody. But this is cool because it's bipartisan, right? We're working with people on both sides of the aisle, and you're only against this if you're corrupt. You're only against this if you're funneling money to somebody who doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm really passionate about it, because we have an opportunity to shed light on corruption. And our city has so much potential. Like you said, I love the word potential because you're a great example of turning a space into something that's real and real good for our people. But we have this money, and I don't know if people are aware, but the city of St. Louis sued the NFL. Won like an insane amount of money
for moving the St. Louis Rams.
The Rams
to
left,
Los
which, by the
Angeles.
way, heartbroken. I mean, I was just devastated. Big football fan.
Yeah.
Ripped my heart out from me, and they left after we, proposed the stadium and all this. Anyway, so they did us wrong. We settled with them. I think it was like $800 million, but we only keep like $250 million, whatever it is. But hundreds of millions of dollars, and then that in combination with the ARPA funds from the federal government, which is a COVID relief program.
Yeah.
We're sitting on like $1 billion, which is an insane amount of money. And
for a city the size of St. Louis, that's an insane amount of money.
Once in a lifetime opportunity to do good.
Yeah.
We have potholes, we have churches that are crumbling, schools that are empty, and we have a real opportunity to do something good and turn the city around. The problem is right now our leaders are lining their back pockets with our money. It's not their money.
Yeah.
Right. They have the ability to choose where to put it. But that's our money, right? We're the taxpayers. And so I think this is a great opportunity, this audit, to let them know that we care, right? That's all it is.
That's what we need. Like that's all it would take to make to instigate some real change is the citizens who, like, it's just so crazy to me that, like, we've gotten to a place at every level of government where these leaders just seem to be completely unaware of the way that our government is supposed to function. We elect you so that you can represent our interests. You're supposed to come back and ask our permission for everything you do. Like, maybe not our permission because we elected you because we trusted your judgment, but that's you get what I'm trying to say. Like, you work for us, not, us be subjected to you.
Well, and I'd like to think that most of these politicians get into office because they actually want to do good. They want to help. And along the way, they get corrupted, and you have, lobbyists telling you what to do. And there's a little bit of, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. How can we, how can we help each other? I think that's just how our system's set up. But it's super transparent, not to cut you off. It's super transparent at the national level, right? Everybody follows the federal political realm because it's interesting, right?
I don't think it's super transparent. Like, you have Nancy Pelosi as a perfect example. She makes $165,000 a year, and she leaves office worth $100 million.
It's true, but we're aware of that, right? We're aware of that.
You know how many years she have to work to make $100 million?
We're aware of that corruption. I guess what I'm saying is, if you compare that to the local politics, which is where we actually have the ability to change shit.
Yeah.
At the federal level, all we do is, look at it and get pissed off, and then,
that's all you can do.
Right. But in St. Louis specifically, like, if you live in the city of St. Louis, you can sign this petition to change something. And it's harder to do that at the federal level.
Yeah, there's something you could do.
So I think part of it too is, like, letting people know that we have the ability to change things. Yeah. And it starts at the local level.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of a sense of urgency, right? Because you guys have a deadline with this, which is crazy to me that there's a deadline. Like, it should be.
Well, so let me explain. So you have 1 year to gather these signatures. They started it last year on November 14th. So we have like a little more than 2 weeks. Yeah. And the big day is election day. So people are going to be canvassing. This group of people are going to be at the polling locations in the city, collecting signatures outside, and they have more than half. I think they're sitting around 5,000. They realistically need like 7,000, but you have to factor in like error, right? So somebody is going to look at these signatures and say, well, this person's really not a city resident. This doesn't count. So they throw out some of the signatures, but they need around 7,000. And if they get 7,000 signatures, the state auditor of Missouri has to audit the city. Which is a big deal. Like, these politicians,
but he or she has to do it. What about a third party? Because What if this person is
Yeah.
this person's appointed by a corrupt official?
That's true, but look at it from the political lens of Missouri's red. This guy is red
he's the
leaning.
state auditor,
State
not the
auditor,
city
not
auditor.
the city. He's
we're good then.
His job, his job is to audit different cities in Missouri.
Got it.
So, but the last time we've had an audit, I think a comprehensive audit of every government institution was like early 2000s, and then before that there was one in the 80s. But right now, if you just look up St. Louis audit, what will pop up is the school systems being audited. So that's a big topic. We're not talking about that. We're talking about auditing a comprehensive we want every government agency to be audited.
Yeah.
And I think you're really only against that if you are corrupt, right? If you are misspending our money, you would not like that. But people on the left and right should support this.
We really got to get those signatures.
It'll happen.
For real. We really got to get.
It's a real opportunity to change our city. And there's so much potential. If you drive down Wash Ave, you see these buildings that were built 100 years ago, beautiful architecture.
I know.
And some of it's just crumbling.
Everybody says that. Everybody that I bring here, because I'm not from here. So all my friends, so when they come to visit, they're coming from Nashville, they're coming from Boston, they're coming from New York, they're coming from every single one, and those are all good cities. Every single one of them always is like, man, the architecture here is insane.
Yeah. Well, St. Louis was the 4th largest city at one point in time.
Yeah.
I mean, we were a big deal, and I think we still are, but that's not the sentiment, right? The sentiment is we're broken.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do.
Got to get out of here.
Yeah. And I don't like that. And I think it speaks on like this greater mindset of wherever you're at is where you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I look at this situation. I'm in St. Louis. I love St. Louis. I'm a nerd for it. I want to do my part in helping wherever that is. And right now it's this audit. Who knows where my life will take me? But my dream, right? My dream is to be mayor, right? I would love to be mayor because I think the people in charge right now aren't doing it correctly. I think there's a lot of corruption.
Listen, if you stick around this community, we might eventually have the horsepower.
Yeah. We'll see.
Dude, you know what? I romanticize or what is it? I guess I really love the old like the old gangster movie, like the old mafia movies. Those guys, they had mayors.
Talk about corruption.
But they had the juice to get people elected, and so
it's true.
And so what I am trying to say is like kind of I romanticize this community, and I talk to Jack all the time. I tell him like, literally what I've thought about from day one is building a community that produces the next mayor, the next chief of police, the next, district attorney or prosecuting attorney, whatever. Because my nature is to be like, oh, well, I'll just do it. I'll run for mayor.
Sure.
I'll run for alderman. Which I'm all about getting involved.
But you can't do it by yourself, right?
But you can't. And so one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. Man, I'll never forget this, for real. And this guy, I didn't really like this guy that much, but he was in my former career, top of the food chain, just as far as like income earners and operators. But he said to me, Mark, you got to stop. You got to, because every day I would show up. When you're in my business, we check the numbers every day, sales, revenue, things like that. Every day I would show up and I was just taking souls every day, and I would rub it in people's faces, and I would, I walked around.
Competitive,
yeah. That's just how I'm wired. And he pulled me in his office and he was like, Mark, we need you to start thinking like a coach, not a player. Right? Like,
did you like that? Was that music to your ears, or were you like,
dude, it was the best advice I ever got. I knew it instantly. I was like, damn. Like he's like, everybody knows that you're like, what are you proving? Like, you've been doing this for 3 years straight. Like everybody knows that you're Kobe Bryant. I need you to be Phil Jackson.
Right.
He's like, what do you, and it was the best ever, because that's what I'm describing right now is a fruit of that advice. Is not instead of being like, oh, it's me pulling people like Jack close, pulling people like you close. And painting a picture for a vision for St. Louis that I think is possible, and getting people bought into that vision. And then the next thing is you gotta, what's the word Jack would know? The word I use all the time is activate. Like I'm trying to activate men, like a lot of people, the difference, what that word describes for me is like the difference between a man that will repost memes or videos or whatever that, activism stuff, and somebody like you who's actually doing something. That's when you're activated.
Well, I'll tell you my biggest problem personally,
Yeah.
just personally, is I have all these great ideas, but I'm bad at implementing them, right? I'm not an implementer. I'm not an analyzer. I'm a dreamer, right? I have all these ideas. And I think, like you said, you have to be able to work with people. I mean, I have my strong suits and I have my weaknesses. If I can find people to help me, where I'm lacking.
They've got to care about the same thing you care about.
It's true. You have to find common ground.
That's the only prerequisite, though. That's the only prerequisite. They don't
Yes.
have to be qualified in the same way that you're qualified.
Yes.
They don't have to have the same skill set that you have. They do have to care about the same thing that you care about. And that's why I think that step one is always painting this picture of this vision for what St. Louis could be. Because if they don't care about that, then they're not going to invest in it, It's
true. It's true. And I think in general, like especially with the political thing, we focus on what divides us too much. There's all this attention on like the 5% of things that we really don't like about the other side. And then there's 95% of shit that we agree on, but we don't talk about that, right? It's not interesting to report on that.
We may or may not agree on it, but I'm 1,000% in alignment with you of like, if you live here and I live here, irrespective of our backgrounds, our cultural, our beliefs, our values, irrespective, if you live here and I'm here, then 95% of what's in your best interest is also in my best interest. Like we both want to be able to walk around our neighborhood and feel safe. We both, want to drive to work without hitting potholes. We both want lower taxes.
This is simple shit. We should all agree on this.
But we spend, to your point, 95% of our time, energy, and attention and effort arguing about the 5% of things that we disagree on.
Not to mention our money. Not to mention the money we have, which is also spspent on
the
that.
$1 billion that's sitting there. And we only spend, 5% of our time, energy, and attention worrying about the 95%. But if we would just like shelf the conversation about abortion, shelf the conversation about gender, shelf the conversation about racism, which I don't believe in racism. I don't think it's real, but shelf those. And then let's get these things situated. Let's get rid of the corruption in our local government.
And then we can talk about that.
And then we can talk about all this other stuff, but because if we just got the 95% right, and we may not agree on it, but I think we could have conversations about those and they wouldn't be toxic. But if we could get this stuff situated, everybody's quality of life in this city would drastically improve. Everybody. But yeah, just the culture is just so toxic right now, especially. This might be one of the most racially divided places I've ever been.
What do you think? St. Louis?
Yeah.
I disagree.
Well, okay. I want to hear what you think about it.
Well, I mean, look, I'm white though, so I have a different perspective on it. I don't see that. But again, you could ask somebody who isn't white and they would tell you why St. Louis is fucked up, why there is this divide. And
more specifically, what I've observed is that there's, of course, people like you who you're just going to go where you want to go regardless of who's there. But I just happen to know just from my last 6 years here that there are, for example, there's a steakhouse that I love steak.
Where?
I'm not going to,
You don't want to call them out?
We're in the city. But there's a steakhouse
Okay.
that's like all the black people go to this steakhouse.
Okay.
It's just a black person. If you walk in, it's unique in the sense that 90% of people in there are going to be black, and it's a really great steakhouse. And then you have bars that if you go to them, it's going to be mostime progressives.
Sure, yeah, I know what you're saying.
It's
very, there's groups.
It's very cliquey in that way, and I've talked to customers here. I'm half black and half white. This is why I don't really play the race game. I really don't. I don't like it at all. I hate, first of all, and I'll also say, dude, the most racist people I've ever experienced in my life are black people, not white people. Black people being racist towards white people is the fiercest racism that I've ever experienced. And I've experienced it here.
Really?
I've experienced it in my shop. Oh yeah. So
in what sense? Give me an example.
I'll give you an example. So we host these social events called Omen socials. You haven't been around for one of them yet, but we're having a Friendsgiving actually soon, so you'll get to experience one if you want to come. But we host these events, and they're essentially just a play on an old school neighborhood barbecue. Like that's how we came up with the idea. Yeah. Like hey, we're gonna be roasting some whatever. We're gonna be barbecuing. If you want a plate, just stop by. It doesn't cost you anything. Come meet your neighbors, get to know them. So every one that we've thrown has actually been like a great turnout. We've had 100+ people. So I'm inviting this one customer though, and she was like, Mark, that's not my kind of party. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, all them white people in there, man. I don't, I don't hang out with white people. And she just told me that like as a blanket statement. I don't hang out with white people. Like, what if they're cool?
Right.
What if they're cool white people?
That's the wrong attitude.
Wait,
that's the wrong attitude.
But I don't think that it's like it's unique necessarily, especially for black folk that live in that direction. If they live in that direction, they don't mess with white people.
Let's not pretend it's one-sided, right? There's white people who will say the same thing.
100%. I've experienced that too. Friends of mine, she was like, yeah, I always tell my mom about your coffee shop. And I'm like, oh, well, why don't she stop by? She's like, she doesn't go to the city.
I hate that.
Period.
I hate that.
Period. I don't go to the city.
Why?
Like, wait, exactly.
Right,
exactly. They can't tell you why. It's so I've seen it on both sides, but I'm just saying, it does seem very divided. And one of the things I think also that accentuates it, which I love this about St. Louis, so I'm not saying it as a negative, is the 84 neighborhoods that you talked about. Dude, it's so cool how you can drive from one neighborhood to the next, and you're in a different neighborhood. Like it feels different. Like the hill.
I think that's really cool.
It's
personally.
so cool.
I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's so cool.
You have these different pockets of culture. Yeah. Right. And in the name of diversifying, I think you kind of lose that. Like if we mix everything too much, then where's the culture, right? It's all this. And I don't know. There's a balance, right? It goes back to balance.
That's kind of like
it's not black or white, right? It's not. You have to have a middle ground. And I think the real question, though, is how do you fix the conversation? Because right now it's focused on, oh, look at the divide. There is a divide. The divide is bad. And I think that's just the wrong approach. I think we need to talk about the solution to that, which is not talking about race, not talking about religion as much as far as when it comes to here's my side, here's your side. Right? There should be like this agree to disagree thing that we build the common ground off of. And then you can start talking about other things. But I think there's too much emphasis on, look at me. Look, I'm the white guy. I'm white and you're black. Let's talk about that. It's surface level. I think that's not important.
Oh yeah, it's definitely surface level, and it's definitely shallow conversation. However, I think that the need for talking about the problems exists and is legitimate because the vast majority of people who could contribute to a solution, they're either unaware or unwilling to admit that there is a problem. They don't even, or maybe they just don't fully understand the problem, and maybe none of us fully understand.
None of us do.
Exactly.
Right.
So maybe none of us, but they don't understand the problem enough to be a contributor to the solution. Like I'm trying to think of an example for you. Like,
well, let me ask you this. How do you move away from the dividing conversation?
Well, it shouldn't be divisive. Like you should be able to have the conversation like grown-ups. And I'm not coming at you, and and I hope you don't come at me. This is not a defensive argument. This is we're adults talking about.
We're doing it right now. Actually,
yeah. We're having a conversation about what's wrong, what needs to be fixed, and then that eventually leads to, which I'm sure we'll get into, a conversation about things that we can do to make it better.
Right.
But like, if I say, the clickiness in St. Louis, is kind of, it holds it back from being as good as it could be of a city, right? And you say, nah,
sure,
nah, I don't mess with white people. Like, well, then we can't actually get to a solution because we have to first come to an agreement of like, what are the issues here? Like we say, if we say, I'll give you another example. Man, we need more. Dude, it's crazy. This defund the police, narrative in St. Louis, this anti-police sentiment in St. Louis is crazy. We need to fix that. And you say, no, F those police.
Well, and there are people who do say that.
But this is why it's worth. This is just answering your question. This is why it's worth talking about the problems. This is why it's worth that. Because you have to set the groundwork, the foundation for a discussion about solutions. And I don't think that. I think that people who say, "Oh, F the police," or people that say, "Oh, F those white people," or they're okay with the problems existing and they think that the problems are justified. people that it's just that they don't fully understand the problem.
You know, I don't want to say I disagree completely, but I do believe that people who have that perspective think there's an entirely different issue at hand. They're focused on a different problem, which is this racist, you know, a white cop hates the black man. And there is some validity in that, right? There's people who are targets of that. Now, at the same time, does that mean that our entire approach to St. Louis specifically is let's get rid of police? I think that's a bad answer.
It's a terrible answer. This is one of the most violent cities in America.
So good. No, but it's good that they have that. Like, let's call out,
Yeah.
you know, bad actors. But at the same time, like, you have to have some type of common ground, which is we need police.
We need police.
We need police.
Let's just agree on this, because I don't know, dude. I come from some of the neighborhoods where the police department, like not these neighborhoods specifically, but like the types of neighborhoods that are losing funding for their police department. And I can promise you, the people that live there are not the ones with the defund the police thing on their front lawn. It's the people out in freaking Frontenac that are, you know, defund the police. Just don't defund them here.
In their gated community.
Yeah, like those are the people talking about defund the police. It's not the people in the hood.
It's true.
But yeah, so okay, so we've talked a lot about some of the problems that, you know, are here. But the other day when we were talking, like, you had a number of like really cool just insights on things that we could do to make St. Louis a better city, a better place to live for everybody. And I just want to hear more about that. Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, I have a plethora of ideas.
Yeah.
The one
dreamer.
idea I am a dreamer, which is, you know, my Achilles heel, because how do you implement an idea that's so big? And here's an example of one that I actually think would fix a lot of our problems. I think St. Louis needs a Cadillac assembly line. It needs a big manufacturing plant that employs like 50,000 people. There needs to be a way to pay low educated people high wages, right? And I don't know what the answer is besides a huge, you know, production assembly line. You need something that employs a shit ton of people, because until that happens, nobody's going to live down here.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting idea. I mean, you know, this is like whatever. The only potential, that's a federal thing. Like that would have to come from.
You know, I don't think it's federal. I think it's more state. But definitely
no. What I mean by that is the biggest problem with that is that we have to bring manufacturing back in general back to the United
But how
States.
do you do that?
And that's a federal thing. You can't, as the state of Missouri, be like, oh, we're gonna put tariffs on everything that comes.
I disagree. Here's
you
how
can't
you do it.
that.
No, here's how you do it. The mayor gets together with the governor of Missouri and comes up with some plan to incentivize Amazon or Tesla or GM to come to St. Louis and build a factory.
There's no incentive they could give them that's big enough for them to move their stuff out of China.
I think if there's a will, there's a way. And yes, you're competing with different countries, but at the same time, you're
talking about a state competing with a country.
With different states too. I'm talking about Missouri competing with Georgia, Missouri competing with Texas.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what they're doing, right? They're cutting these taxes. Look at Elon Musk, right? He had a whole facility in Silicon Valley and moved it to Texas because the governing body was so atrocious that he couldn't stay there. So I think Missouri, if our leaders were smart and sharp, they would take the same approach. How do we incentivize business to come to St. Louis?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Granite City, great example of a town that was built around steel. And it employed a lot of people, and it was great for the community, but it's not functioning anymore. You don't have that. And I think it drives a lot of working class people out.
Yeah. I think this is a great idea. I haven't heard anybody present this idea for real yet. And it does potentially, it could solve a lot of problems. Like one of the biggest problems in the city that I see is that we have these massive buildings that are completely empty. And so like, what do you do with those? Well,
nobody's going to buy them.
Nobody's going to buy them, and or nobody's going to live in them either.
Well, first of all, like we said with the police, right? If you have nobody protecting property and people's businesses, nobody's going to put money into it. But at the same time, if there's no people down here to shop at the business, why as an investor would I put money into it?
Nobody's going to put a business in.
Right. So there's a lot of reasons. But
chicken
I
or
think
the egg?
Our leaders, their only job is to make our city better, right? Yeah. That's their job. And if they're bad at their job, then we fire them and, we don't elect them, which happens all the time. But I think there's like this pattern. And if you look at the last 60, 80 years in St. Louis, they've all been left-leaning, Democrats, right? They've all been Democrats. It's been blue, and every city is like that.
Yeah, every major city, yeah.
And I think we've had maybe like 2 or 3 Republican mayors in our history. I think it's time that we kind of drop this whole identity and party and come together as St. Louisans and say, let's come up with a different idea. Let's have a different approach.
Yeah.
Especially with this money that we're sitting on. But yeah, I mean,
because we're trying to basically get a different outcome with the same approach every time.
It's identity politics, I think, is in the way.
And
right?
and here's the deal. I mean, I'll just come out and say it. I know you won't because you're part of this initiative. You're trying to stay bipartisan, but even if we can successfully get an audit done and we could bring some attention to this issue, and then the ultimate outcome, which is what we actually want, which is come up with a plan for how to use this $1 billion to make our city better.
Right.
Even if we could get that far, if the same leadership that's in charge of the city right now is in charge, if the left is in charge of this city and that money, it's going to go towards welfare programs and social programs, and it's not going to go towards actually building the infrastructure, the economy, the police department, our teachers. Like, I think there's a list of things that are high priority things that could be low investment, high impact.
Agreed.
If we just put money into those things, but we'd hand that stuff out so quick, dude.
Well, we're doing it right now.
I know. We're handing it to the politicians and we're handing it to, the poor people. And then about your idea, it is a really good idea. And I will ruminate on it. Me and you will probably have more conversations about it in the future because where you say you're a dreamer, I am too, but I feel like I do have a knack for just getting things started. Like this.
Well, look at this.
Yeah.
Good example.
Yeah. And so I'm sure I could find a starting place, but I don't like the sound of we got to find a way to pay low-skilled people a lot of money, because I believe wholeheartedly in meritocracy. I believe I'm a big believer that nobody's special. If it can be done by anyone, then it can be done by anyone.
I love that mentality. Unfortunately, not everybody agrees with you.
Yeah, not everybody agrees, but I'm just saying. And so, like, I was born to drug addicted parents. I grew up in the foster system, in and out of crack houses and all the worst of the worst. Then, terrible things happened to me in my small adolescence. When I was 11 years old, my mom dropped me off on a bench and told me, "Hey, I'll be right back," and never came back. I've been through the ringer. I've been addicted to drugs. I've been in prison. I've experienced systemic racism. I was arrested in a car with a guy that looked like you. He was driving, the car was registered in his name, the drugs were in a neutral spot, and I went to prison and he got probation.
Wow.
So I have all this long list of excuses for why my life shouldn't look the way that it does, but I refuse. And I think that everybody has the opportunity to refuse. I really do. I don't think, maybe they don't all have the same intellect, maybe they don't all have the same skill set, because we have different life experiences, we have different genetics.
Sure.
Cool. But I refuse to say that, there's people that are they're just destined to be laggers for their whole life. No, I'm trying not to swear. You accept that. If you're a lagger, if you're poor, if you're for any length of time, it's because you're accepting it. I've been poor in my adulthood, but I didn't accept it. And so it didn't last for 5 years or 10 years or anything like that. So it's just, if you want to be a low skill person, if you're low motivation, low skill, not a self-starter, not a very strong work ethic, then you just don't make that much money. Like, you have to just understand that that's your life. Because if we start paying low skill people, low motivation, low work ethic people a lot of money, then it de-incentivizes.
I want to clarify because that's not my idea. I don't want to give money out to people who don't deserve
it.
Good. What I'm saying is you have to find a way
for them to make a living.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And not everybody has thick skin like you, by the way. Not everybody is as determined. Not everybody has the faith that you have. And so I'm talking about those people who aren't as sharp, right? You need to find a way to employ those people. And now, I'm just in general, I'm talking about America in general. You have all of this manufacturing overseas. We used to build shit here in St. Louis.
We used to build everything.
That doesn't happen anymore.
I know.
And I think that's a big problem. You need to have a product to produce. And we're living in this this society that revolves around the latest tech startup. It's
everything's
all social
a digital
media
product.
Right. And I think that's a big mistake. We're moving in this direction where nothing's real anymore. It's all artificial. It's all virtual. St. Louis needs to excel in the sense of business, and right now it's not.
You know what, man, one of the things that literally, charmed me, or, sort of, one of the things that really like got me to fall in love with St. Louis and to see the potential of it is actually what's been done here already. Like people don't.
There's lots of progress.
No, but I mean, like, what has been accomplished here? What started here? What was built here?
Sure.
People have no idea how much private wealth is in St. Louis.
Well, we're the second richest city as far as like generational trust fund
private wealth.
Yeah,
dude, there's the private wealth here is insane, and it's because there was people like you and me that had an idea and literally built global brands. Like the Bush family started Anheuser-Busch here. The Taylors started Enterprise. Enterprise Rental Car is the largest privately owned company in the world. Largest. Every Enterprise Rental Car, every airport, is owned by one family. It's crazy. The Jack Dorsey, who started Twitter, is from St. Louis. Worldwide Technology, one of the richest black men in America, is from St. Louis. Like, dude, it is crazy. And I, as I learned these things, I was like, man, people think St. Louis ain't.
No, we got it rolling, but we need to keep pushing in that direction, right? We need to incentivize people in St. Louis to start the next AB, the next enterprise.
I think it's possible. And I'm working on it. Like, I'm trying.
Now, my issue with AB, it's a bad example, I have to say. I hate to call you out, but they sold out to Belgium, right? Well, they're not a St. Louis. The Bush family doesn't own AB anymore, and that's
but you can't.
Heartbreaking,
dog. Yeah, it is, but what else are they supposed to do? Like, dude, they built a global brand.
That's true. No, I understand.
They put St. Louis on the map. Like I feel like AB, like Anheuser-Busch is synonymous with like the Cardinals. Like, it's like,
right, but they're not a St. Louis company anymore. And
I know that's
what I hate.
I think it's actually owned by China, like a Chinese.
It's Belgium.
Belgium.
I think I could be incorrect on that, but right. I mean, how do you keep it in St. Louis?
I'm with you, but you can't discount what they've done. And for me as a young entrepreneur, I say if they could do it, then I could do it.
True.
So it serves that purpose at least. And then plus we still have the brewery here. We still have, the Grants Farm. We still have everything that they've done.
We have the coolest shit as far as a city layout. Everything we have it all.
Done,
we do.
Yeah. But I hate to zoom out from local to national, but one of the big reasons why I am a supporter of Trump in this election is I mean, dude, for me, it all comes down to the numbers. Like the thing that you're talking about bringing business back to St. Louis, but also to the United States. Trump, one of his main things is that he wants to put heavy tariffs on everything.
He's a business guy.
He understands how to make these levers move, and he wants to put heavy tariffs on everything that comes out to incentivize manufacturing. These companies like whoever, like Google, Apple, but also like Ford and, all the car companies to bring their manufacturing back to the United States. Right. And dude, that is a huge thing. Not only that, he wants to bring taxes down. I pay almost 50% of every 50%.
Yeah.
Dude, of every dollar that I earn, I give to the.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question. What is it that people hate about Trump? What do you think people hate about him? Why is it that he has this brilliant business mind? I think it's actually the reason he got elected, but why do people hate him?
Have you ever, are you into like the toxicity of our food at all?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm asking
I'm not a health nut, but
have you looked into it? Well, there's a lot of studies about, fluoride and, what does, excess fluoride intake over a certain amount over a period of time, what does it do to people? And there's fluoride in all of our tap water, the fluoride in every water in every state. And it's kind of unnecessary because it doesn't do anything. They used to say that you needed fluoride to make your bones or whatever, but that's silly. Now we know that that's not true, but there's still fluoride in all of our tap water. Well, fluoride, what it does over time is it measurably lowers people's IQ. Okay.
Well, it calcifies your.
And so I think that I say that because I think the only reason why people don't like Trump is they don't like his personality.
What does this have to do with fluoride, though? What's the connection here?
Low IQ people are emotionally driven, and high IQ people are logic driven. And I think that we have a, and it's not just the fluoride, but it was really interesting when I learned that. But it's not just the fluoride. It's how we spend our time. We don't read books anymore. We scroll on TikTok. It's, the type of content that we consume. It's the curriculum that we're being taught in school.
I think the bigger picture, what you're trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're saying is we're putting the wrong things into our body, right? Whether it's food or whether it's information, we're consuming way too much in a very improper manner.
Yes. And I am the biggest believer of anybody in how capable we are as human beings. Like, I think we are so much more powerful and so much more capable than we give ourselves credit for. But it doesn't just happen. Like, you don't just come into your potential as it's very systematic. It's very intentional. Like, nothing happens by accident. Right. And so I think that we have like this epidemic of these just very low vibration, I'll say. So I'm not insulting anybody, but these very low vibration, these low frequency human beings they're almost entirely emotionally driven, emotionally responsive. Like, you know how bad it is to live your life reactive? Like proactive. You're living your life proactively.
It's an interesting way to look at it. It's very interesting. I mean, I look at it in the sense of there's doers and there's viewers. There's people who do and there's people who view, and I'd rather be the doer. I mean, I'm going to consume information.
No, there's doers that just try to burn stuff down.
That's true. There's schemers, right? That's a whole nother conversation.
There's doers that just try to burn stuff down, and
That's true.
It's for the exact same reason that we're talking about. It's because they're upset about something.
I think they're focused on the wrong thing. That's what it is. I don't think they're.
But I think that's why people don't like Trump. I think that's the only reason. Because if you look at his track record, if you the United States is the biggest business in the world.
True.
And he's built and managed many successful businesses. If you look at his cabinet, this is like the dream team of any political, or any presidential cabinet ever. You got Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard. You got you got RFK.
Yeah.
Who's his VP? Vance. Like, dude, these are like.
So we're filming this before the election. I'm really excited to see what happens. I'm more interested in our reaction, right? Because the world's going to keep spinning either way. But it makes me wonder, like, if he wins, what's the reaction? If he loses, what's the reaction?
Well, you know what I'm afraid of is, again, because it goes back to the numbers for me. It goes back to taxes. It goes back to tariffs. It goes back to bringing inflation down, American jobs, American manufacturing. I want that so bad for the future of America. Now, the other side, that's the most important thing to me in this election. I'm not voting on abortion. I'm not voting for, racial policy. I am voting for immigration and foreign policy as well. But the most important thing to me is like our economy and our taxes. And I think that I'm emphasizing this because I think it's a good practice for everybody to ask yourself what would affect your life the most, and then prioritize the topics that you're voting for based on what is going to affect your life the most, not what you argue about on the internet the most. That's a very healthy perspective shift to have. So for me, there's clarity around I'm voting on tax policy, I'm voting on economy. Well, I'm afraid that if Kamala wins, I'm not even afraid. I'm prepared. If Kamala wins, I probably will close my business.
Don't say that. I hope you don't mean that, because
I will probably inevitably. I'm not saying I'm going to make a decision.
Right.
I'm saying I work. Listen to this. I work from January to June to give that money to Kamala, or to give that money to the government. I work from July to December to keep it. I can't take anymore. Like, it de-incentivizes the entrepreneur so much. Right. It takes away the American dream. Which is people's
appeal to Trump in the first place.
It takes away the American dream. Right. Dude, it doesn't exist anymore. Unless you're a tech startup or unless you're an OnlyFans girl. For real. You're not.
Yeah. I agree.
Like, you used to be able to like come out with a new comb and become a millionaire in America. You can't do that anymore. It's dude, you don't understand. For the first year, every month I have to go to the bank, I have to get a cashier's check, and I have to send the city taxes. This isn't even federal taxes. I have to send the city taxes. For the first year, that check that I sent them every month was more than I made. Me, the owner. Like, it's It's crazy, dude.
And it'd be different if they actually took that money and you could see.
It would be different.
No,
it would
nothing.
be different.
They
but
flush it down the toilet.
But it's not.
Yeah.
And so I'm genuinely prepared for the reality that like our economy, inflation gets so bad, that our economy gets so bad, that taxes get so high, that the job market gets so bad with tens of millions of immigrants here working for under the table, that it'll be too hard for me to stay in business.
I hope that you're wrong. I hope
I'm wrong too.
I hope that doesn't happen.
This is why I have these conversations, because I just want people thinking about this. Is the reality. This is the reality. Like, I'm a business operator.
Well, I think the pendulum's always already swinging that way, right? I think people are becoming more aware. If you talk about looking back to 2016 and Trump's first on the scene, he was a target. He still is probably the biggest target.
They just tried to assassinate him twice. What are you talking about?
Which I think that's going to win him the election. I think in hindsight, they're going to look back and say, you can't lose after an assassination.
That's a big
attempt.
mistake.
I think that'll be the.
But I am genuinely concerned. Like you said, the world's gonna keep spinning no matter what.
True.
Like, here's the deal. I'm a survivor. I'll be fine. I'll go work at a company. I have a skill set that's very valuable, so I know I can always go and get a good job. But like the entrepreneur path, when you're the brick and mortar entrepreneur. This doesn't apply to the tech startup or the people that are making money on digital products. That's a great business, and it's still a great business. I think it'll always be a great business as long as we embrace technology the way that we are right now. But I'm in brick and mortar. I'm selling $5 coffee cups or cups of coffee. Right. So like, I gotta sell a ton of cups of coffee, and it's just there's a point where it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. And I do believe that would be devastating. Kamala winning would be devastating for our small
financially,
our small town culture in America. Like this, because the way I feel, dude, there's your favorite restaurant that's privately owned. They probably feel the same way. Like I know that.
But people on the left ignore that, right? They're not worried about that, right?
No,
because they're living in the gated Frontenac community, right? They have their money. For the most part, I would like to think that they're not worried about the financial troubles. They're worried about the emotional identity.
That's the most troubling thing to me, because when I look at the landscape right now, Kamala versus Trump, just apples to apples. In my mind, I actually can't understand. I can't even conceptualize a position that would be pro Kamala. In that, there's no.
Well,
I look at her.
You know what that is. You know what that is. The people on the left who like Kamala like her for a reason, right? She's all about identity. It's all identity. It's emotion, right? It's emotional.
Okay,
pitch.
so I just can't find a good argument. Like, I can't find look at her track record. She hasn't accomplished anything. She never got a single bill passed. Never as a congresswoman in California, she proposed 271 bills. Not one.
Really? I didn't know that.
Not one ever became a law.
But wouldn't you agree it's less about Kamala, it's more the anti-Trump ticket?
It is. Yeah. But that's really sad to me. But the most alarming thing to me, what I was just about to say, is driving around St. Louis. This is crazy. Driving around St. Louis. The only place that I see Harris, Waltz signs on the front porch and are in very wealthy neighborhoods. And so to me, it's puzzling. I don't know what to make of it, because those people are clearly not unintelligent. They're you can't.
Yeah.
Again, meritocracy. I believe in you don't get there by accident. Sure. You don't just become a millionaire being an idiot. And so, I'm in U City. I'm on what's this road right here? Lindell. I'm on Lindell along Forest Park. You're talking $5-10 million houses. These people, Harris. So that's really puzzling. I don't know what to make of that. How do intelligent?
There's so many reasons.
How do intelligent people want?
I don't think there's a broad brushstroke answer. I think it's really specific, right? People hate Trump for a lot of reasons. People hate Kamala for a lot of reasons. But I think Trump's more the output. It's the product of people's sentiment on politics for a long time. The fact that an outsider got in is cool to watch. That's
never happened.
It shows that the system still works.
It does show that the system still works. However, it requires $1 billion.
It's true.
System still works, but it's a two-party system, and it requires $1 billion. But do you know that's never happened? I just learned this.
Oh, what do you mean you just learned this? Yeah, of course.
I just learned
that's never happened ever
in the history of America. It's always been politicians, so people who already have former political experience, or generals. It's never,
Right.
you know, our top ranking generals like General Ulysses S. Grant and so, but it's never been an outsider. And I'm like, man, that's pretty
We're living
cool.
in a really cool historical time right now.
I think so too. I think this is maybe the most ever. I'm sure every generation says this, but this has to be the most exciting time.
Sure, yeah.
This is the most exciting time to be alive.
I mean, love him or hate him, the fact that he is running for president and was president is pretty wild.
It's insane.
It's nuts.
It's insane. Did you listen to, okay, so you listened to the Joe Rogan?
I listened to a majority of it, yeah. They talked about that a little bit, right? And I think Rogan did a good job kind of pinning Trump, you know, answering the questions, right? And Trump's good at, like, you know, going off on tangents and bringing it back in, but he's not a politician, right? He's not
Dude,
polished.
Tell me one president ever that would sit on a 3-hour interview.
It's great to see, isn't it?
3-hour interview. There's no teleprompter.
I hope Kamala does the same thing.
She denied it. She turned him down. Joe Rogan asked her to come
bad
on.
luck. I hope she does it.
He asked her to come down.
Did she say no? I
yes,
didn't know that.
He's already announced it. She turned down the interview with the most, the most far-reaching media, independent media person in our country, and she turned it down.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Well, it's the epitome of what it means to get attention right now. Rogan and Trump, the two biggest players on the block. So I don't know how he tops it. Right? I don't know what's after this. What's the next big thing? I don't think there is one.
Who? Joe Rogan?
Just for in general, like the attention that we spend focusing on politics. Like when he got shot, I'm like, whoa! Like we're living in a movie. I felt like this was the climax of the movie. Right?
I didn't believe it. But, like I think it was Rocco. Somebody, either you or Rocco.
You remember where you were when you heard?
No, I was out. I just remember that I was out. Did you text me that they tried to assassinate Trump?
Wasn't that your bachelor?
Oh, it might have been. Yeah, it was on my bachelor trip. Actually, we were out in Colorado, exactly. And so him and Rocco comes up to me with my buddy, and he's like, "Dog, they just tried to kill Trump," and I was just like, "No, they didn't." No,
that whole thing, and the fact that story's kind of getting like brushed over now, I don't like. But
imagine if
it's crazy. He turned his head like this and.
So this brings us to sort of religion and spirituality because for real,
faith.
I think it was Jack. Jack, was it you that just pointed out to me that Trump's been like talking about God more? It might have been somebody else. I don't think it's coincidence. I think
divine intervention.
Dog, that bullet was not a bad shot. That was a perfect shot. It was supposed to go through his eyeball, and he turned his head, and it hit his ear. He even said, "It's only by the grace of God that I'm here." And I think that when you have an experience like that, somebody, I don't know, it wasn't Jack, but somebody just pointed out to me that, you know, Trump's been talking about God more, and then he just got prayed for. That was a big thing. Like he was somewhere and everybody put their hands on him and prayed for Trump. And it was like a really cool moment, especially to be made public. And I said, I don't think it's coincidence. I think when you know that was a perfect shot and that it was supposed to go right through your skull and it hits your ear, you got no choice but to be like, "Hey, thank you, big man." Thank you.
I wish you would touch on that a little bit more. I feel like, and I haven't seen what you're talking about, but I think it is a little, it's a little muddy, right? He's not coming out saying, "I'm a believer," right?
No, he did.
Did he?
He didn't say "I'm a believer," not those words, but at the RNC, at the Republican National Convention, he came out and the first thing that he was touching on was like, "Man, it's only by the grace of God that I'm here. It's only by the grace of God that I'm here." And I just thought, you know, even saying that, like, that's great. Like I don't know if you saw, but recently at a Kamala rally, somebody was like, "Jesus is Lord," and she's like, "Oh,
you're at the wrong rally." Oh, how insulting! How insulting is that to people of faith? I mean, I just don't get that. But again, it just shows you like out of touch politician. That's a bad response there. And these politicians should be polished. They should know what they're saying most of the time. She is not put together. I mean, it's just hard to watch. It's hard to watch, bro.
All right. So okay. Did you grow up? Are you grew up a believer?
I grew up raised in the Catholic Church, which has its pros and cons. I went to Our Lady of the Pillar.
Yeah.
Actually, I grew up in I can't think of it.
You're Irish.
Christ the King.
You Irish?
No, I'm not. I'm German and I'm Czech.
Got it.
But I grew up going to Christ the King in U City, and then I got involved at a youth group at Chaminade Pillar, and then went to Priory for mass in like high school. And you know, my perspective on the Catholic thing is really interesting because
I would love to hear it.
You know, I love it, but at the same time, it's some of the shit I'm like, you know, I have to step away from, right? Because I believe
like what?
Let's start with like big picture, okay? I believe that the Bible is a book of stories and stories with meaning. and there's a lot of wisdom in these stories. The Catholic perspective is, no, it's literal, right? There really was an ark that was built, and 2 of every animal was on it. And whether or not that was real physically, or if it was just a story, I think the meaning's more important. But like Adam and Eve, was there really a snake on a tree that whispered to, and then they bit an apple? Did that physically happen? I don't know. I don't know if it really matters that much.
Yeah, none of us really know.
I'm more of a believer that there's meaning behind these stories, and I think the Catholic Church takes it just a little bit too far for me. It's hard for me to stay tuned in.
Can you give me an example?
Yes.
Yeah.
The body of Christ. Drink this blood.
Yeah.
That, to me, it's a little bit too, like, they really believe this is his blood. And they take it very seriously. And I'm not trying to insult anybody here, but for me, it's more of a metaphor. It's not necessarily like I'm going to drink his blood and eat his flesh. That's a little bit too far. Also, the saints. Like, I'm not praying to a saint.
I'm not praying to
I'm
a
praying
saint
to
either.
God.
Hey, man, I'm with that, dog. I'm not.
But look, everybody has their own way. Right? Everybody has their own approach.
No, I think I had this conversation with somebody today, James, who just recently found our place, and it's so cool to see Christians flocking here.
Of all denominations, by the way.
It's so cool to see Christians flocking here. And it's only his second time today. He stopped me both times and said, hey, man, I just love this place. I'm really grateful that I found it, whatever. But he told me that his background was Catholicism, and that he recently sort of has started exploring non-denominational.
Raised Catholic, and now is looking into.
Yeah, he was raised Irish Catholic, apparently.
Yeah.
So I was talking about it with him, and one of the things that I said to him, he was like, "Oh, I love exactly what you just said. I love that Christians come here, all denominations, and I love the Bible study is sort of like, it's just based on the book and interpretation of it." And I was like, man, I really, and you were like, I don't want to offend anybody. I really don't like accentuating the differences between the denominations, because it's like, it's so useless.
Agreed.
Like it accomplishes.
I agree so much.
It accomplishes literally nothing. In fact, the only thing that it accomplishes is division and strife within the church. Like the church. There should be it doesn't matter. Whatever your faith looks like, like I care about the fruit, and this is biblical, right? A good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. So you could be Catholic, you could do all those things, and that's what popped into my head, because you're like, I don't want to.
But the Catholic Church is very.
It's not producing a lot of good fruit.
Well, they're, if you're not baptized, you can't take communion, right? Or, there's all these rules, right? And I think that it's good to have that structure, historically speaking, right? It preserves the tradition of the faith. But at the same time, it kind of gets in the way of people who maybe want, to get closer to God. But no, you can't come in. I don't like that. I don't like that approach.
Relationship over religion. I think that's what they say, right? And if you have religion but no relationship, it's like faith without works.
Sure.
It's like coffee without caffeine.
Yeah.
Like you ain't got nothing, dog. You got water. You got,
right. Well, Jesus, and in the Bible, it talks about it a lot. Like, he pissed off a lot of rabbis. The priest of the time, the politicians, did not like him because he was claiming to be God. And so they killed him. Right. And just that story alone is interesting. But then you look into it, and he's hanging out with prostitutes. He's hanging out with, people who are committing crimes. He's not hanging out with the priests, right? And so he chose to spend his time with people who he thought he could heal, people who he could help. And I think that's what we should really be doing if we call ourselves believers. If we really do have faith, we need to be trying to help people, right? And vice versa. How can other people help me? It's not one way, right? There is community and faith. I think.
Yeah, that's where it gets tricky, though, because if you believe that. Like as way earlier, you were saying like, oh, we don't need to talk about religion as much and stuff like that. It's tricky, because if you really believe what you say you believe, if you believe that Jesus is the way, if you believe that there's healing, there's freedom, there's there's peace, there's all these things in Christ, which I do believe that. If you believe that, then then I feel like you have this insatiable, this irresistible urge to share that with people.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
To give it to them.
But people have to want it.
And
you can't push it.
And people do have to want it. Yeah, they do have to want it. And so I agree with you in the sense that, like, if you're really a Christian, you should be wanting to help people. You should want to be saved people. But that does look a certain way.
It's true.
Because you were helped with this, not just with not with hedonism, not with, hey, do whatever you want, not with instant gratification, not with none of that, with the principles that are in the Bible. And I agree with you. And I don't know. You know, I got a lot of people that looked, you know, that listen to everything that I say very carefully.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you in the sense that it's almost unimportant whether or not you are in the camp that the Bible is literal or that the Bible is metaphorical. It really is unimportant.
Unfortunately, there's a group of people
that disagree. I know,
that say if it didn't literally happen, then this whole thing is a sham and it's all bullshit. And I just believe that there's meaning behind the stories regardless, and that's what we should be focusing on. I
wonder. I struggle with that because I say if Jesus really lived, and the gospel is generally speaking true, if the gospel is true, Jesus was healing people, Jesus was, whatever, and then he died, he resurrected. I think which
I believe, by the way,
I do too. I think that being true, the Old Testament is a totally different thing. It's a totally different thing. Right. This is not first person accounts. This is not eyewitness testimonies of things that happen. This is like a story. The Old Testament is essentially a story, or a bunch of stories. But the gospel is eyewitness accounts of what happened. So I think that you treat them differently. That's the point I'm trying to make. I do actually think that you could say that you take the New Testament literally.
Right.
Like Paul was actually in prison.
Well, they go hand in hand. But some of these miracles that you talk about in the New Testament, it's hard to believe.
It's hard.
It is crazy to believe. For example, one of them, and I love this one because it highlights this parallel metaphor that I think is more important. But a blind man is sitting on the road weeping. And Jesus comes up to him and touches him. And now he can see again. Mm-hmm. And did that literally happen? Like, was he literally blind and could not see and Jesus healed his vision? Or was it a deeper meaning? Like, he was blind in his faith and Jesus touched him and now he has a different perspective on life. Mm-hmm. I would argue it's a little bit, it leans towards that a little bit more. I mean, whether or not he was physically blind, I don't care. I think that's the meaning behind the story. Yeah. But the Bible, what makes the Bible cool is there's like just all of these metaphors and they weave into each other.
Man, there's so much wisdom.
So much, bro. It's actually insane. And that's the reason it's existed for thousands of years.
But you know what, though? It's so interesting to me, like, because your rational brain wants to like reject like the fact that he was physically blind and then he physically saw, right? But okay, I used to teach sales. Okay, so in this there's this thing called the loyalty circle, and I can't believe I have to apply.
Talk to me. I can't
believe I have to apply this right now. But in the loyalty circle, it's like the way that it works essentially is like. First, the prerequisite is understanding this. I think the king of all sales concepts is make a friend, make a sale, right? Mm-hmm. People are much more likely to take advice or recommendation from somebody that they perceive as a friend.
They want to like you.
Than somebody that they perceive as a salesperson. Perfect example is like you walk into a shoe store, the guy walks up to you, hey man, how's it going? You're like, I'm good, man. I'll let you know if I need anything. You kind of instantly the wall goes up. I'm wearing a new pair of shoes. You don't ask about them, but I tell you. I say, oh, dude, I got these new shoes. They're fire. Yeah. You're more likely to buy the shoes that I'm talking about. And I know nothing about shoes. He knows everything about shoes. But so make a friend, make a sale. Second is this loyalty circle concept where how it works is I give you a piece of advice or a recommendation, or even maybe I don't like give it to you, but you just pick it up from me. I say, man, I really like these shoes, whatever. You buy the shoes. And you try them and you like them. Well, your trust in me, my trust just went up, right? You trust me a little bit more because that recommendation was good. Now I say, oh, dude, I quit Zins and now I started this new thing.
Sure.
You try them. They're fire.
Yeah.
Okay, you love them. You like them even more than Zins. Okay, now my trust just went up, and like this process, this is the circle. It's I give you a piece of information, you go and self-validate it. You put it to the test. You find it to be true, so you come back and you're open to taking a new piece of information from me, and that just goes over and over and over again. Well, until there becomes a point where, and this is where the loyalty circle is complete, where you trust me blindly. You no longer feel the need to go self-validate the information I give you. If I give you a piece of information, my trust is so high now because I've given you so many pieces of information that I've reached a point where you no longer feel the need to self-validate. You'll actually advocate for the veracity of what I'm saying or the advice that I give without self-validating. So I think this is just life. This is humans do this, and everybody's different. So you may be more trusting than I am.
Now, are you applying the same concept of faith?
I'm about to tie that together.
I'm following.
So you might be more trusting than I am, and so you only have to go through that cycle 5 times, and then you're like, oh, this person, they know everything. And I got to go through it 50 times. But so everybody's different. But I do think that people, I have experienced this with faith. I have stepped out in faith. You know, Proverbs 3:5 is, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And I think that the biggest growths in our faith happen when we do that. When we exercise faith, even when we don't understand why we should or how it's going to work out. So I think that you go through that loyalty circle with those examples, the ones where you don't understand. You don't understand. Your rational brain can't wrap your mind around why you should forgive that person who did something to you that was unforgivable, or why you should not have sex with your girlfriend when everybody else is having sex with their girlfriend. Or, there's innumerable opportunities for us to do that, to exercise faith when we don't understand. And when you do that enough times, then you get to this point where you read about a blind man on the side of the road that couldn't see, and Jesus comes up and touches him, and then he sees, and you don't understand. But I think that's just the argument. I'm not saying I'm right.
No, I love that. I've never thought about it like that, but it makes me ask the question, like, what's the whole point of life in general if that's the game we're playing, right? Because we could be in a universe where we don't need faith. We know God's real. And a lot of atheists, that's their best argument is, I don't see God. I don't hear God. Where is he? How can you believe in this thing?
I would argue that Christians do live in that universe.
Some of them.
They do.
Well,
I hate to say the real Christians, but they don't need it. They know God's real, and they live like it.
Right.
They live like it.
But you need faith in order to do that, right? You have to believe.
It has to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where we're in the beginning of that loyalty circle. It has to start somewhere. You have to say, dude, I love this. I talk with my buddy Jack over here who produces the show a lot about this stuff because he's a skeptic. He's an agnostic. He grew up Catholic.
Oh, really?
He's very similar to you, actually.
Are you agnostic currently? Interesting.
He's similar to you in the sense that he respects the Bible, has read it, is familiar with Scripture, and he just thinks of it metaphorically. I forget what I was just about to say.
Well, it makes me really want to ask you a question.
Go ahead, ask him.
But you don't have a mic, right? So
ask him. He can come over. Come on. I actually almost invited Jack to be on this podcast because I knew he would be fascinated by your conversation.
Well, we're going to have to run it back then.
Just come on over. Well,
I mean, I don't want to put him on the spot, but I guess my question is, like, as an agnostic or an atheist, you still have to have faith, but you put it in something else. You just don't call it God, right? You're believing that you don't fully understand, right? And so then you're indifferent. And that's my understanding is that's the argument of an agnostic is I'm going to be neutral. I believe neither way, but that's still, you're still arguing for some type of perspective. And what is that? What does that mean? To what universe are you saying that I'm neutral? I think it's just interesting that we live in this universe. There's a predicament. You have the ability to believe or to not believe. Either way you go, you're still believing in something, as far as your opinion. Your opinion is still faith in some sense. Either way. So it just makes me wonder. Really? Why? Because you don't have to take an approach. You have to.
Because Christians say, "I know God exists." Atheists.
That's not true.
God does not exist.
That's not true.
Interesting.
So him and I's conclusion of our debates is always, Jack, me and you have looked at the same information.
Right.
Neither one of us is certain of what we think we know. and I just choose to participate.
Right. And you choose not to.
And he chooses no, for real. And he chooses not to. But that's it. And I don't think so. When he says Christians say they know God is real, we listen. I think that's silly for any Christian to sit there and like argue with somebody and try to convince them in that way that God is real.
Right.
That's counterproductive. The best approach is, hey, you look at the information, I've looked at the information. Neither one of us knows anything. We know nothing. I just choose to participate, and that's why I brought up that loyalty circle example, because the best you can do is go and take some of
Give them a little taste.
Take some of the advice that you pick up in the book, right? Take some of the advice, go self-validate it.
Right.
See, does your life get better?
Right.
Does your life get better? And me and my friend Matt Graham, I had him on the show, and he put it so eloquently. He was like, man, I subscribed to the values of Christianity before I subscribed to the mysticism of it. And it's because he went through that process. He said, oh, these are the values. I'll apply these values and see how it affects my life. And I applied this thing and my life got better. I applied this thing and my marriage got better. I applied this thing and
There is a mystical element of it.
And then you buy into the mysticism of it because you don't understand.
I want to touch on that for a second because it weaves back into our conversation on take this flesh, drink this blood. They believe that there is a mystery of faith. There's a big emphasis on that. And it gets a little spooky, right? There is a little bit of hokey pokey. In my opinion, it's like, I just don't want to, I can't.
It is a little spooky.
I can't submit to that idea. But, there is this, and the Bible talks about it very specifically, grace. It's a gift, right? To get into heaven, there is nothing you can do. There's no amount of faith. There's no amount of acts, right? Yeah. You're only getting in by the grace of God. He's giving you a gift, and it's your ability to accept it, right? And so I think you have to be open.
That's right? So beautiful.
But it's a wild thing to think about.
The most beautiful thing about the thing that I love about it is unlimited grace and radical forgiveness. Like that's the essence of there's no other. Every other religion, we have things in common. Like most of the stuff is similar to every other religion. The thing that makes Christianity unique is unlimited grace and radical forgiveness. It's just such a beautiful thing. And that's one of those things too, that you go and you put to the test. Like, I'm sure you're familiar, but in the book where he's like, hey, if the stick by which you judge others is the one that you'll be judged by. If you don't forgive others, we won't forgive you. Dude, there's no other religion that tells you to do that. Yeah. There's no other religion that says, if somebody hits you on the right, turn the other one too. If somebody takes your coat, give them your cloak, give them your shirt as well.
The Old Testament is pretty wicked, right? There's some very harsh passages in there. And then Jesus comes along and he turns it into like this redemption thing.
Turns it upside down.
And the priests at the time, they're like, what? No. They freak out, right? And so they end up, persecuting him. But a great example of that is, Old Testament calls for adulterers to be stoned in the town square.
I know.
Stoned.
I know.
Publicly. I mean, how humiliating. Jesus comes along in the middle of one of these events and says, he who has not sinned shall cast the first stone. And they're like, what the fuck is he talking about? But how cool is that?
But they all bounce.
Right.
They all bounce.
Right. And they're like, wow. Right. But again, a great example of did it literally happen? Who knows? I think it did, but who cares, right? It's the meaning behind the story that we're all flawed. Who am I to judge you? And I think if we all had that mentality, politically we'd be a lot better. Religiously we'd be a lot better. And I think there's just a great opportunity to bring people together. Like you're doing that, right? Which is why I'm really attracted to this place. To be in this environment is awesome. You're bringing people together, different points of view in one room.
Wait. Okay, so back to you though. What church do you go to now?
Well,
because I got a church that you can go with.
I'd be lying if I said I go to church regularly. I'm open to it. I'll stop by.
So my wife and I go every week, and we really love bringing first timers too. And if you enjoy the Bible study,
what denomination is it?
It's non-denominational.
Okay.
It's just by the book. I mean, it's not very aggressive. It's just by the book, and my pastor's real solid. He's not afraid to talk about anything, but he really doesn't get into anything super dicey. Like we haven't talked about like abortion or politics very much. Some churches, they go a little bit harder on that stuff, but it's just such good guidance, Is
it Twin Oaks?
No, Twin Rivers.
Twin Rivers. Okay.
Twin Rivers. That's where Nolan and Janice, who lead the Bible study, go. That's where probably a quarter of the room upstairs goes there.
Yeah.
And so when you go, you always see people that you know from Bible study. Okay, cool. I'm gonna make a mental note that we're gonna
I'll pull
do
up.
that. So okay, Jack loves to ask this question, and I want to ask it as well. I'm gonna start asking it to a lot of people, but like, what would you say is like the core? How do you ask the question? The core tenet of Christianity, or the core? Is that it? What do you think if you had to pick, 4 pillars of Christianity? What would they be?
I think grace has to be number one. The ability that God has, we can't understand the mystery of it. Gift. It's a gift. I think that's number one. 2, 3, and 4, I don't know. I'm not a theologian, right? I mean, I could sit here and tell you.
Yeah, but what matters to me is what you follow.
My personal perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that the ability to humble yourself is really important, right? I think you have to be able to forgive others and look in the mirror and say, I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I think our biggest problem right now today is like everybody's ego's out of whack. We think that we're important, and we're not.
Yeah,
we're not. We're on a little rock spinning around a ball of fire, and we think that my follower count's up. This video did well, or look at my financial statement. And it's like, no, this whole thing is temporary, and our egos are completely inflated.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really wish we had the Bible here and we could open it up. But
another way of thinking about this question, another angle of thinking of it from is basically, what standards have you applied in your life because you know the Bible? Know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think being open-minded, like being able to learn from others. Everybody, especially when it comes to like denominations, everybody has their own perspective on what it means to be faithful. And I think collectively there's truth, but I don't think my personal take, I'm wrong about a lot of things. I mean, I'm upfront about that. I don't think I have the answers. But I think it's really important to communicate with other people, especially people you disagree with, in effort to learn. Like maybe I could learn something from this person.
Yeah. I agree 1,000%.
So I think that's really important with faith. And that's why I love having these conversations, especially when it comes down to like specifics, like, did Noah really build an ark? Like I could debate on that all day, but I think it's cool to
I don't have those conversations.
No, but to listen to somebody argue about it in the sense of, yes, no, there was a wooden ship that this guy built. And I'm open to being wrong, but
things like that, I just feel like we waste so much energy talking about stuff that like for real doesn't matter. Like if it matters, let's talk about it. Like if we're talking about, Amendment 3 to, if we're talking about that, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, and we can go round and round as long as we need to, because it's going to matter in 2 weeks,
True. I mean, there's things that affect us, right?
Yeah. And then there's things that are like, it just doesn't.
I'm more interested in like the big picture personally. Yeah. Like I love talking about the big picture, things that you can't really pinpoint, because how do you find out what's true and what's not when you're talking about this like broad, like, idea that there's a creator, we have purpose, and it's like, it's crazy to think about. But think
about believing that you don't have a purpose. Like think about believing that there's no meaning to your life.
My perspective is that even people who don't believe secretly do, and they just don't call it that. They call God something else. The word God is a big turnoff to a lot of people.
I know.
Organized religion is a big turnoff. You went to CBC, didn't you? All right, so you've grown up with the whole faith thing. I'm sure there's some of that's been pushed down your throat, and you're like, I don't align with this. It's forced. It can't be forced, like we were talking about earlier. Like
you got to come.
You kind of have to be open to it, and until that happens, there's no point of even having the conversation, right? You don't want to talk to somebody who's closed-minded, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I try to be open, right? I want to be open in every aspect, not even just religion, but politics and faith and everything else. Like, what can I learn from this person?
I was just going to make a dirty joke. Like,
well, we're talking about something kind of important here, but that's fine. I don't care. What's the joke? Now you have to say it.
Well, you're like, I just want to be open in everything. And I was like, not everything. Just everything except for like 1 or 2 things.
Yeah. Well, there are some things you have to be like, that's actually a great segue into like things that you have to say no to. Right. I mean,
yes.
God calls you to be like, no, I'm not going to commit this sin. And they get really specific with it. So yes, it is important to not be open to everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually wrote a post today that I won't post until for a week or so, I think next Friday. But it essentially touches on that, about how something that I've really aspired to do here at Omen is create an environment that's actually tolerant, that's actually inclusive. And I say that often. I say it in that exact verbiage because I do think eventually it'll become a part of our brand. But we've been persecuted publicly many times for some of the values and some of the standards that we maintain around here. And it's almost always the persecution comes at the hands of the people who champion inclusion and tolerance. And it's like, you guys are the most intolerant people that I've ever come into contact with. And I do aspire to build a community, an environment that's actually inclusive. However, whenever I say that, people are always like, oh, well, why do you talk against this and that? Because inclusion comes with standards, you know, like just inclusion doesn't mean the exclusion of still your standards. Like there are certain things that are intolerable, that are unacceptable, that will never be a normalized occurrence in any community that I'm a part of. I don't care if I have to go live on a ranch somewhere with my family. We're not going to normalize pedophilia. We're not going to normalize, kids making irreversible decisions when they can't, it just.
So how do you address that? I'm just curious because and I've told you this story. I discovered this place because
he was on Reddit.
I was on Reddit and I saw this post and somebody was talking mad shit and I said, now I really want to go buy a coffee. I'm like, now I have to go in there. Yeah. And anyway, I'm curious, how do you approach that, right? You have somebody who calls you basically evil, right? They're saying that you are evil. This is bad. I would love, and I don't know your approach, but if I'm you, I would love to bring them in. No, come on in. Okay, let's talk. Then I'm curious if that happens.
So if you go to those posts, because you only saw Reddit, but if you actually go to the posts, my number one response is like, I will buy you a coffee. Yeah. Come to the coffee shop.
Do they come in?
I've never had a single person. Never. When it was going viral, I had one of the top comments, obviously, because people were the thread. But in the thread that I'm going back and forth with all these people in the comment section, I just kept saying, like, dude, if you come to the coffee shop, we can sit down and talk about this because it's a conversation that
they don't want to have the conversation.
They've never come by.
So what was it specifically? Because I don't
Somebody
know if I'm aware.
donated. In fact, in the comment section, I don't want to leave you out if you're listening. There was a person that donated $100 for anybody that wanted to come to the coffee shop and talk.
Really? Wow.
Literally, they're like, "I'll buy the coffees."
Yeah.
But people don't want to talk. They just want to be angry on the internet and leave their comment and then block you.
So what was it? Do you want to talk about it or not specifically?
I don't care.
What was the first thing that kind of got you some traction?
The first thing that got me some negative attention, was I made a post that was like, and it's on Reddit. I mean, you can see it, but that was like it was a video, and it was like, in a world where, sort of men are becoming more feminine and women are becoming more masculine, and in a world where, like homosexuality is becoming more and more, prevalent, and in a world where, it's normal for us to be like nude on the internet and it said, you can count on me to be here preserving some of the old fashioned values like marriage, monogamy, modesty, and
right. And that pissed a lot of people off.
And there was one more, and I was like, and to be a man, the old fashioned kind. That's how I ended. And people went crazy.
So you knew before you posted that, you knew that would. Or did you not expect this?
I posted that years ago. Like I posted that before Omen. Like,
oh, really?
People had dug through my
old shit. So this was an old post that they brought back to life.
Yeah, and I was in an environment where like I had, I got a couple thousand followers on social media. I had a podcast, so like that was my brand. Like I was constantly talking about. Like my upbringing and like not having excuses, and I sort of all my content was that way. Right. During COVID, I was going crazy on social, so like it wasn't an unusual thing for me to post. Like it was edgy, but all my stuff is edgy. But somebody had dug through all my old content once Omen started gaining some traction, and they brought it back to the fore.
I would love to talk to that person.
And then that's not the worst. So that's how the first one started, but the second one was somebody had collected screenshots. And I mean screenshots because they were screenshots of Instagram stories that I had made over the course of a year.
Yeah.
and they posted a swipe post with all these things that I had said or posted over the course of a
person's got too much time on
of
their
a
hands.
year. And they
Yeah.
posted that post. That post might still be up. I think it's pinned on their page. And that one went crazy. But yeah, I mean, it was accumulation of things like things that I had said in the comment section of other posts. Like, how did this person
Right.
see all of this?
So when that happened, what was your knee-jerk reaction? And you're his brother. I'm curious, from the outside looking in, did you kind of have a different perspective on it as well? But when somebody says that to you, like, you're evil, pretty much is what the summary of it is,
Well, that's
right?
always
You're wrong.
Yeah, that's always their response. Is
How
like,
do you take
you're
that?
hateful, you're evil, and it's like no. I'm when it says do everything you do in love, I do, and I've explained this to people.
But is there a part of you that reads their comment and you're like, shit?
No, it definitely affects you. Like if you say that it doesn't affect you, you're lying. Because you hear all day that you're a bigot, that you're hateful. The number one thing is they're like, just go out to the county. Like, why are you in the city with that?
Right. That's inclusive.
That's exactly, that's inclusive.
Yeah.
And that's the number one thing is that, and it does affect you. It really does. It discourages you a lot to think that you're trying to do something that's undeniably good. I'm trying to give something that's good to the city.
Right.
And you all think I hate trans people. You're wrong. The way I view the trans situation, okay, this is the way that I view it, is if you have clinically, you're depressed, you're severely depressed, and you come to me and you say, Mark, I'm super depressed. I'm thinking about killing myself. If I say, yeah, man, you should try it, and see how it goes, see if it works, see if it helps your depression.
Yeah.
That's not love, right?
No.
So similarly, I think about the trans situation of you're coming to me, you say, hey, Mark, man, I think I'm a woman. I think I was supposed to be a woman. I'm not, and this is what's called gender dysphoria, which is the same as clinical depression.
Right.
You come to me, you say, Mark, I think I'm supposed to be a woman. I'm telling you, well, chop off your penis and see how that goes. Maybe it might help.
Again,
that's not love. And so for me, what I think is that the trans people, they're searching for, what they want is the same thing that we want.
Yes.
They want to feel peace.
We call it different
They
things.
want to feel secure in themselves. They want to have a sense of identity. They want the same things that we want. And I've glimpsed those things.
Right.
I can honestly say I think I'm happier than most people. Like I love my life. I wake up.
Well, I got a question for you.
Hold on. I want to finish this because this is the hot thing. Everybody wants to hear this from me. I don't have anything. I love those people the same way that I love, the homeless people, the same way that I love, the incarcerated people. I have the same compassion and empathy and care for all those people, the same with the trans people. But I strongly disagree with the path to the destination that they're trying to get to. It's not chop off your parts. It's something else, and I don't know what it is, but I strongly disagree with that being the path. The path is not you're depressed, well, try killing yourself. That's not the path. It's not, I think I'm so make some irreversible changes and decisions and see if it works. And then, have you ever looked into the number of detransitioners there is in the United States?
No.
There's people who have made those things and then tried to reverse it. You can't reverse it.
Sure.
It's irreversible. So that's, people misunderstand my intention. And then they're like, well, they're not hurting anybody. So why do you participate in the conversation anyway? The reason why you participate in the conversation is because you love them.
You want to help, right?
Yes.
Right.
That's why you participate.
But their argument's the same thing, right? If they want to transition, sure, let's let them. But I think, again, the big picture here is we're focusing on the wrong thing. I mean, does your genitalia really matter that much? Is that your identity is in your genitalia? I don't think so. No. Is it in your skin? Your skin color, really? That's your identity? No. I mean, I just think identity is too important today. And it doesn't help with social media where you have a number next to your name. Like, if the number's high, then this person's important. And if it's low, then we shouldn't care. And I think that just the collective approach as society we have on ego is not healthy.
Yeah, Martin Luther King said it the best: "Is judge a person by the substance of their conduct and their character." And I when you say that, people call you insensitive. Like the big thing online when I was getting canceled was like people would leave these comments on all of our Instagram posts and they say, "Well, are gay people? I'm gay. Am I welcome in your
What's your answer to that?
Well, I always say, well, it would be wrong for me to assume your sexual orientation. So like, how do I know that you're gay?
Well,
and they're like, and then they hate
Yeah.
that because to me it doesn't matter.
Right.
I don't care if you're
They
gay.
want it to matter.
They
much.
want it to matter.
That's my issue.
Yeah, and when I say, oh, well, if I assumed your sexual orientation, then I'd be wrong, right?
Well, my issue is it doesn't matter that much, right? If you're gay, that's fine. If you're transgender, that's fine. I really don't care enough. You want me to care. That's how I look at it.
Well, the problem, the reason why you should care is because it's not enough for these adults to be, transgender or gay or whatever. They want to teach your kids that it's okay. This is an epidemic. This is bad. That's where I think most Americans have a problem, because nobody ever had a problem with transvestites. Nobody ever had a problem with transgenders. Nobody ever had a problem with cross-dressers or drag shows. The reason why we have a problem with it now is because you're inviting toddlers to the drag show.
It's a slippery slope, right?
It's a very slippery slope. You don't, and then they're doing it in school. So it's like, imagine you send your kid to school.
Sure.
And you're trusting the school.
There's no Pledge of Allegiance, by the way.
No
There's no talk about faith. But if we want to talk about transitioning.
But that's the problem. And then people say, oh, well, you're hateful or you're this or that. No, like, you do whatever you want. Like, I'm cool with you doing whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's when you're trying to program our
push
kids.
It. Right. Well, but their argument, and I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, but in a sense I am, because their argument is the same with faith, right? Why should we talk about God in school? Who are you to push religion on my kid? That's how they feel about faith. And so there is kind of like this dichotomy of, why can't we have both, right? I think if you lay out both perspectives, people have the ability to choose.
You judge a thing by its fruits, right? So let me ask you this. This is something I think about a lot, actually. So there have been a handful of people in my life who I have met, and they just have like this. They just have something about them where you're just like, man, there's just something different about that person. That person has peace. That person has happiness. They get it. They whatever happened in their life, it led them to this place where, like, man, I just want that. All of those people that I have met, they've believed in something, right? They're believers of something. I've met one Muslim and the rest are Christians. Okay. And they all have it. And you just can't shake it. You don't meet people like that every day. I have never met a gay person or a transgender person that has that peace, that has that happiness, that has that security.
You don't think they exist?
I have never met one. I'm not saying I don't think they exist, but I'm saying I judge a tree by its fruit.
Right.
That's why it's okay with me if you teach my kid the Pledge of Allegiance and you teach him about, praying, and it's not okay if you teach him about this thing I have not seen any good fruit.
I like that. I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, I've thought about this so much because I get canceled, because I've been in these conversations. So every bit of my cancel, sort of my persecution has come around this conversation about LGBTQ.
Really? Well, I'm curious if this is going to spark something, because you're really doubling down, and I don't want to be like the person.
I am doubling down.
I'm not trying to push you to, like, here's your stake your claim here, but at the same time, it's like, it's good to have opinions.
You have to.
I
care
find
about
more respect.
this.
No, I have more respect for the people who disagree with me than the ones who don't want to talk. Right? I mean, you have somebody who completely disagrees with what you just said. The fact that they have the courage to voice that, I admire. Right? We should have the ability to talk about this
in person.
Right.
Like, caveat, in person, face to face, I will talk to anybody about this stuff. If you mustering the courage to leave a comment on this video, that's coward stuff. That's not courage.
So how do people, if people are watching this and they're just fuming, right? They really hate everything we're talking about, and they disagree, how do they get into contact with you? How do they talk to you?
What do you mean? I'm in my coffee shop every day. You know where I'm at. You know where I'm at.
IRL. Come in.
I would love for you to come in and say, pull me aside and say, hey, man, I listen to your podcast or something I really want to share with you. You got a moment. 1,000%. I will buy you coffee and I will sit down with you, every single one of you. I swear that I want that, because one of the things I'm trying to do with Omen is normalizing agreeing to disagree. We have to be able to agree to disagree. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I want to hear you out. I want to hear your position. I want to understand how you feel. I want to explain if you misunderstood, or it's really if you misinterpret my intention. I really want to clarify that, because this is not malicious. This is because I care about our community. I imagine that these things have ripple effects, and that the children that I'm going to have are going to deal with those ripple effects. This is why I have those conversations today, because I don't want my kids to grow up in an environment where like that's normal. And if that ends up happening, I'll deal with it. That's cool. But I'm not going to let this moment pass without voicing my concern. That's literally all this is. And so, yeah, I invite that, man. I really do.
I just wanted to tie it back into faith really quick because it's very parallel, and there's a great passage. I don't know the exact passage, but it's I think it's Old Testament. Be hot or cold, but if you're lukewarm, I will spit you out.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's crazy.
And that one's pretty deep, right? Because it's like pick a side, like have a stance, right? Believe in me or don't. I'm not trying to talk about agnostics, but I mean, he really does. It's very clear. It's like be hot or cold.
I know.
And so as much as we argue and disagree about, whatever it is, it's like
just be hot or cold,
right? The fact that there's people with different opinions is cool, right? We should have difference of opinions and be able to talk about it. But if you're lukewarm and you're kind of like, I don't really care, whatever. I think that's really like the ultimate sin is trying to play it safe and not putting yourself out there.
Got it. Yeah, I can see that perspective. The thing that the last thing I'll say on this is like, you said earlier, like, man, you're kind of doubling down. I tell everybody, like, again, those posts that got us all that negative attention, they were old posts, and it was quite frankly, it was even before I was going to church. It was before I took my faith seriously. Like, I believed in God, but like I wasn't, radical forgiveness, boundless grace. Those were things that were unfamiliar to me. And so. And then also I've had a radical shift in my perspective on the LGBTQ community as it pertains to faith too, which has contributed to what I'm about to say. But how I feel now is I still agree with everything that I said in those posts, but the version of me that exists today, I just would have said them differently. That's my position. That's why I don't mind doubling down. But I don't disagree. I never deleted any of the stuff. I left it up because that's what I feel. That's how I feel. And I still feel that way. But I wouldn't have said it that way.
So you would have offered it a little softer.
I just wouldn't have said it that way. I don't know how it would have looked, but I would have said it differently. One of the things that really radically shifted my perspective on that community was a woman that came in here. She had the courage, like what I was just saying. She came in here. We talked about a lot of things. DEI. We talked about, because I strongly disagree with DEI. We talked about this trans situation, and she said to me, the reason, because she had a trans flag on her shirt and a Bible in her hand, and I was like,
those people exist. Yeah.
I was like, we got to talk. We got to talk. But she wasn't trans, and so she was like, I have a tremendous amount of compassion for those people, even gay people, not even just trans, gay people, trans people, because we know that their sin is no more severe than the man who struggles with lust every day, right? You go to work every day and you're flirting with your receptionist, or you're checking out every customer that comes in. You're struggling with lust.
It's the same thing in the eyes of God.
Same sin.
Yeah.
And he said, or she said, and I have so much empathy and compassion for those people, because the only difference between that gay person and the man that's sitting next to his wife lusting about other women is that their sin is visible. And so when they walk in, we all, even if unconsciously, we all, pull back from those people, but we don't pull back from the guy. We shake his hand, we give him a hug, we welcome him to church. Right. And when she shared that with me, it changed. It changed the way I have those conversations 100%. Because I feel that. I know that so many men struggle with lust, like she was describing.
Sure, and I think it's only fair, like if we're talking about the LGBTQ and that whole group of people, and we call them out for being incorrect, right? Which I wouldn't really say that, but I don't believe they're necessarily incorrect. I think, people should do whatever they want, and there's good and bad in every group, right? But if we're talking about that group, it's only fair if we talk about the group of men who are straight and lustful, right? You have to do both.
It's the same sin. It's a sexual sin. It's the same. It's the same in the eyes of God. And so I forgot. I didn't realize that for the longest time. And when she shared that with me, it just shifted the way I have the conversation. They're no crazier than I was at one point when I struggled with lust. So,
but it seems like all the attention is like on that group. And I think that they look at it from the lens of, why do you care what we do with our bodies or whatever?
Well,
and there is a good argument against that
because we care about you.
But what they're really saying is, if you're talking about us, you have to talk about what you're doing. That's
yes.
you know,
let he who has no sin cast the first stone.
Right,
That's exactly what they're saying.
Which I think that, you know, and I lean to the right a little bit in my political views, and I think that that's part of the issue is like there's no accountability on the flip side of the coin, right? It's kind of one-sided in that aspect. Unfortunately, I think that their argument a lot of times is emotional, and I'm just a logical guy. I like logic, right? So the identity argument, I just don't align with that. It doesn't resonate with me.
That's not how you're going to win me over.
Right. But I think you have to talk about both sides, right? In efforts to get to the truth.
I'm with you. That's the goal, right? It's
Yeah.
just truth. It's just clarity. Alignment is really a good word as well. So, okay, last like thing or two here that I got is one, dude, you got like, how many? You got like 200 and something thousand followers on TikTok.
Yeah.
Just for doing toasted Rav reviews.
Yeah.
Dog, that's crazy. That's fire. You're like the Dave Portnoy of toasted Ravs.
You know, I mean, people say Dave Portnoy, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't get inspiration from him.
I
right?
love that guy.
Portnoy's awesome, right? And he's charted his own path. It's definitely, you know, kind of an offshoot of that. But to me, it's really just like, I love St. Louis. It's my way of putting on for the city. Not to mention toasted ravioli is just like, you know, unique to us. Mm-hmm. And it's a unifying force. Gay people love it. Straight people love it. Black, white,
just
rich,
like
poor.
coffee.
Everybody loves ravioli.
Just like coffee.
And I think, I mean, I kind of use that platform to talk about Ravs, right? And it's playful. It's lighthearted, but it really is one of those things that everybody agrees on. And I think that's part of the issues that we're talking about, these really divisive topics, and there's no common ground. There's no unity. Mm-hmm. And so I'd like to see the conversation kind of go in that direction where we can come together in some aspect. So that's just me putting on for St. Louis.
I love it, dude. So who's got the best toasted Ravs in St. Louis?
Well, Ferrado's has my highest rating on Manchester. It's out in the county, unfortunately. I have to say though, and I haven't done a review.
Unfortunately,
I haven't done a review here, but I took a girl on a date to Olive and Oak in Webster, and they don't do takeout. Like I couldn't do a review there because they don't do to go, but their Ravs are insane.
Really?
Olive and Oak. Have you ever been there?
I don't go there.
No. Why? What am I missing?
Well, one, they hosted a drag show for kids, and
Olive and Oak.
Yeah. And the poster, the advertisement was like serving milk and cookies, and don't forget your ones to tip to entertainers on the poster. And they had the gall to email me that I got that email. So that's one reason. And then that already turned me off. But the second thing was when Vivek Ramaswamy was in town, he was looking for an event venue to.
When was this?
He came into town to be on Grace's cousin's podcast.
What?
Yeah.
No shit.
So anyway, he came to town and he wanted to. I love Vivek, but he's the one that's like proposing a lot of this government efficiency, this tax.
He's sharp.
Yeah, he's very, very sharp. But so anyway, he came to town and he was on the podcast, but then he was trying to host like a little event, a fundraising event or something. And he wanted to host it at Olive and Oak, their event venue, and they told him he couldn't do it. And I was like, you know what? Screw these people. Then,
wow,
yeah, they turned him down. So
that's crazy.
So it was like strike one, strike two. Okay, cool. I don't go there. Yeah. But that's cool.
They have good Ravs. I mean, regardless, their Ravs are pretty good.
Their Ravs are fire. Yeah, good for them.
Interesting. So when was that? When was that in town? Not to cut you off, but was that recently?
No, that was when Vivek was still campaigning.
Okay,
that was when he was still campaigning. He came on the show. And yeah, I mean, at that point he had my vote over Trump.
Yeah.
He had I was going to vote for Vivek rather than Trump at that point. But then, obviously we saw what happened and now they've got the super team. But, so last thing I wanted to bring up was, I just want to circle back. One of the biggest things reasons why I wanted to have you on the show and why I expedited it was because I know you guys need some more signatures. And so can you just like highlight that? Where do people go? They do have to be a registered voter in the city of St. Louis, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So, but beyond that, if they are, and they want to go sign this petition, where do they go?
Right. So unfortunately, you can't do an electronic signature. That'd make it really easy.
Oh.
We do have a website where you can contact us. You're not contacting me, but the people who run it.
Yeah.
And like I said, they're going to be they're door knocking currently, but they're going to be outside the polling locations on election day.
Would they be willing to like like post up here?
They would love that.
Because
Yeah.
I could have all my customers sign it.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be really cool. I was thinking we could put like a little.
No. We should like. I would like literally
All
tell
right,
everybody to sign.
Yeah,
it.
so we need like 2,000 signatures.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I could probably get a couple hundred here.
Yeah. Every signature counts, and we're really close, right? I mean, they've come a long way, and this is really important for
The city.
the taxpayer, right? The city, yes, but the taxpayer, like we have the ability to take our money and put it in the right places.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're leaning to the left or the right, it doesn't matter. This is just about accountability and anti-corruption.
This is part of that 95% that
Right.
we need to take all the things that we just talked about for the last hour and a half. We need to take all those things off the table, and then we need to put this thing forward and be like, all right, our 95% will get a lot better. Our quality of life will get a lot better. Our city will become a lot better if we could just shelf those other conversations and let's prioritize this. So no, I'm dead serious though. If somebody will come, or if I'm allowed to do it, then I'll just take a booklet and just have people register and sign, and they can just come back in a day or two and pick them all up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So you can go to auditstl.com auditstl2024.com. And we could bring in some petitions in here, get signatures. You have to be a registered voter in the city of St. Louis. You can't be in the county.
Got it. So make sure if you live in St. Louis and you follow the Omen Instagram, I will announce on Omen's Instagram when we have that in store, and then you guys can just stop by and sign that petition. But we gotta get those signatures.
Once in a lifetime opportunity. We're sitting on $1 billion. This is a lot of money. By the way, I just want to mention before we wrap this up, the audit costs money. Like the state auditor doesn't do this for free, right?
Mm-hmm.
It costs, they're estimating like, around $3 million. That sounds like a lot of money. When you compare that to the amount of money that they waste, right? Not to mention the, $999 million. This is just like 2% of all the funding they have. We can use just to make sure our money isn't being wasted. That's all this is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think everybody could agree on this. It's a great opportunity for us to come together. And I appreciate you letting me talk about this.
Yeah, of course, man. Dude, I care about this city and I want to see it come to fruition. So cool, man. I really appreciate your time today, man. I love these conversations, so I hope I didn't offend you with anything I said.
No, I had a good time, man. We got to run it back.
Yeah, we definitely can. And I got to have Jack on here because I know he's chomping at the bit. He's the best conversationalist I know, actually. So if you catch him in the shop, it's good. It's a good conversation. Worth the time every time. But dude, thank you so much. What's your Toasted Rap page so people can follow you?
Yeah, you can just look me up on TikTok, Mitch LaMar, or on Instagram, Mitch_LaMar. And I also do, I'm going to plug my pottery page. I make pottery. That's like that's my side hustle. So bowls, coffee mugs, vases. You can go to mitchlamar.com, check it out. I got shit for sale. And
Let's go, baby.
appreciate
All right,
it.
guys. Yeah, make sure you connect with Mitch, and thanks, brother. We'll talk to you next time.